In the vast expanse of the universe, where planets orbited silently around distant suns and nebulas birthed stars, a legend had grown. Tales spread across galaxies of a creature so deadly that even the bravest warriors and the most advanced civilizations dared not speak its name. This creature, known only as Vakrul, was a beast of unimaginable power, born in the darkest corner of the universe. It was said to be a destroyer of worlds, leaving nothing but desolation in its wake. For millennia, the galaxy lived in fear of Vakrul, but no one had ever seen it and lived to tell the tale. The creature was a myth, a nightmare, and a force of nature all at once. But all of that changed when the creature set its sights on Earth. Earth, a relatively small and insignificant planet, suddenly found itself at the center of a cosmic threat. Vakrul had emerged from the void, heading straight for the blue planet. The world's leaders scrambled, their combined military might nothing in comparison to the reports of the creature's power. It seemed humanity was doomed, until a single individual stepped forward, a man named Kale. Kale was an enigmatic figure, a wanderer with no past and no future, whose eyes held the secrets of countless battles. He was a warrior forged in the fires of countless worlds, yet humble in his demeanor. When the call for Earth's defense went out, Kale answered, not with bravado, but with a calm certainty. "The creature can be defeated," Kale said, "but not by any weapon made by man. It must be met head-on, with courage and skill." And so Kale was sent alone to meet Vakrul in the dead of space, far from Earth's fragile atmosphere. Armed with nothing more than his combat suit and a blade forged from the core of a dying star, Kale awaited the inevitable confrontation. The entire world watched, breathless, as he prepared to face the universe's greatest terror. As the moment of battle approached, Kale floated in the endless blackness, the stars around him a silent audience. Then he saw it, a shadow moving among the stars, blotting out entire constellations as it approached. Vakrul was not a beast of mere flesh and bone. It was a living nightmare, an amalgamation of darkness and fear. Its form was ever-shifting, a swirling mass of claws, fangs, and tendrils, with eyes that burned like dying suns. The creature emitted a roar that echoed across the void, shaking Kale to his core, but he stood firm, gripping his blade tighter. The battle was about to begin. Kale braced himself as Vakrul descended upon him, a mass of swirling shadows and dark energy. The creature's sheer size was overwhelming, its presence a void that seemed to swallow all light. It lashed out with tendrils that moved faster than thought, each one capable of slicing through the strongest of armors. But Kale was no ordinary combatant. His reflexes, honed over countless battles on distant worlds, allowed him to anticipate and evade the creature's strikes. The first clash was a blur of motion. Vakrul's tendrils whipped through space, aiming to ensnare and crush Kale, but he moved like a shadow himself, dodging and weaving with fluid precision. His blade, forged from the core of a dying star, glowed with an intense, otherworldly light as it met the creature's dark tendrils. Each strike severed a piece of Vakrul, but the creature regenerated almost instantly, its form shifting and twisting in the darkness. Kale knew that this was no ordinary battle. He wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for the survival of Earth and the countless lives that depended on him. But despite his skill, the creature seemed invincible, a force of nature that could not be stopped. Every cut he made was healed within moments, and for every tendril he severed, more appeared. Then, as if sensing Kale's frustration, Vakrul changed tactics. The creature began to emit a low, guttural hum that resonated through Kale's suit, vibrating every atom in his body. The sound was more than just noise. It was a weapon, an attack that sought to disrupt his very being. Kale felt his vision blur, his thoughts scatter. He had faced many powerful foes, but never something like this. Gritting his teeth, Kale activated the energy shields in his suit, trying to block out the sound, but it was no use. Vakrul's hum penetrated everything, and Kale realized that if he didn't act quickly, he would be undone by the creature's relentless assault. In a desperate move, Kale fired his thrusters, propelling himself directly at Vakrul. The creature was caught off guard as Kale charged into the heart of the darkness, his blade slashing in all directions. He struck at what he believed to be the creature's core, but Vakrul was everywhere and nowhere at once. The creature's form enveloped him, threatening to smother him in its shadowy embrace. But Kale fought on, his willpower pushing him beyond the limits of any human. He could feel the energy of his star-forged blade pulsing in his hand, a beacon of light in the sea of darkness. It was then that he understood Vokrel was not a creature of flesh and blood, but of energy and darkness. To defeat it, he would need to draw it into the light. With a surge of determination, Kale blasted away from the creature, putting distance between them. He looked at the nearby star, its light a source of power that could weaken Vokrel. He realized he had to lure the creature closer, into the star's powerful gravitational field, where its shadows would be exposed to the full force of the light. Vokrel, sensing Kale's intent, roared in fury. The sound was deafening, but Kale was ready. He turned and sped toward the star, the creature close behind. As they neared the blazing orb, Kale felt the intense heat and radiation on his suit, but he knew it was the only way. Vokrel hesitated, its shadows shrinking as the light grew stronger, but it was too late to retreat. Kale had it right where he wanted. Kale hovered in the vastness of space, his breath steady but his heart racing. The heat from the nearby star was intense, even through the reinforced suit he wore. He could feel the radiation seeping through, but it was nothing compared to the searing light that now bathed Vokrel. The creature, once a massive, shadowy entity capable of swallowing entire worlds, had been reduced to a smaller but still menacing form. It thrashed in agony as the star's light burned away its darkness, exposing its true essence. The core of Vokrel was now visible, a swirling mass of dark energy, pulsing like a heartbeat, its rhythm erratic and frantic. This was the creature's true form, the source of its power and its vulnerability. Kale knew that this was the moment he had been fighting for. If he could destroy the core, Vokrel would be vanquished forever. But the creature was far from defeated, and it was now fighting for its very existence. Vokrel's tendrils, once vast and numerous, were now concentrated into a few powerful extensions, each one tipped with jagged claws that shimmered with dark energy. These tendrils lashed out with renewed ferocity, aiming directly at Kale. The speed and precision of the attacks were breathtaking, but Kyle was ready. He had studied the creature's movements, its patterns, and its weaknesses. Every battle he had fought before this moment had prepared him for this final confrontation. Kale's blade, still glowing with the energy of the star, was his only weapon. He dodged and weaved through the void, his movements precise and fluid. Each time a tendril came close, he countered with a quick slash of his blade, severing the dark energy with a burst of light. But for every tendril he cut down, another seemed to take its place, as if Vokrel was drawing on its last reserves of power to keep the fight going. The battle became a deadly dance, with Kale and Vokrel locked in a struggle that could only end in one of their deaths. The star's light continued to weaken the creature, but it was a slow process, and Kyle knew he couldn't afford to wait. He needed to end this now. Kyle accelerated toward the core, his focus narrowing on the pulsing heart of darkness that was Vokrel. The creature sensed his intent and shifted its form, creating a barrier of solidified energy between Kale and its core. The barrier was unlike anything Kale had encountered before. An impenetrable wall of pure darkness, absorbing the light from his blade and the star alike. But Kale wasn't deterred. He had faced countless obstacles in his life, each one seemingly insurmountable, and he had overcome them all. This would be no different. Drawing upon the last of his suit's energy reserves, Kale activated a power surge that pushed his systems to the brink. His blade glowed brighter than ever before, infused with the combined energy of the star and the core within his suit. With a primal roar, Kale charged at the barrier. The blade struck the dark energy, and for a moment it seemed as if nothing would happen. But then the light began to eat away at the darkness, creating a crack that grew wider and wider with each passing second. Vokrel screeched in terror, its form quaking as it realized that its final defense was failing. Kale pressed on, pouring everything he had into the attack. The barrier shattered with an explosion of light, and Kale was propelled forward, directly into the heart of Vokrel. The core, now fully exposed, pulsed wildly as if trying to escape its fate, but there was nowhere left for it to go. Kale's blade met the core in a final, decisive strike. The moment the blade touched the dark energy, there was a massive shockwave that rippled through space, distorting reality itself. The core began to implode, pulling in all the surrounding darkness as it collapsed in on itself. Vokral's shrieks grew louder, a sound of pure desperation, as its existence was unmade by the very force it had tried to consume. Kale felt the immense power of the implosion pulling at him, trying to drag him into oblivion along with the creature. But he held firm, using every ounce of strength left in his body to resist. The light from the star surged into the void left by Vokral, filling the darkness with pure, blinding energy, and then, in an instant, it was over. The core of Vokral collapsed into nothingness, its dark energy dissipating into the cosmos like a dying ember. The creature, once the most feared entity in the universe, was no more. Kale floated in the aftermath, his suit's systems barely holding together, his body exhausted but alive. The silence of space returned, broken only by the distant hum of the star. He had done it. He had defeated the beast that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. But there was no time for celebration. Kale's vision blurred as the adrenaline of battle faded, leaving him on the brink of unconsciousness. He managed to send a final transmission back to Earth, a simple message confirming his victory. Then, as the light of the star began to envelop him, Kale let his eyes close, trusting that the rescue teams would find him in time. As the remnants of Vokral scattered across the cosmos, Kale felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. The battle had taken everything he had, but he had emerged victorious. His suit, damaged and barely functional, still managed to keep him alive as he drifted in the vastness of space. The star, now free from the creature's shadow, shone brightly, a symbol of hope and renewal. Kale's victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On Earth, people erupted in cheers as they watched the broadcast of the battle. The leaders of the world who had once feared the end of all things now praised Kale as the savior of humanity. But for Kale, the accolades meant little. He had done what needed to be done, not for glory, but for the survival of countless lives. A rescue ship soon arrived, and Kale was brought back to Earth. As he stepped out of the ship, he was met with applause and adulation, but he remained humble, his thoughts still with the battle he had fought. He had faced the darkest force in the universe and lived to tell the tale, but he knew that there would always be other threats, other battles to fight. Despite the celebrations, Kale quietly slipped away, disappearing into the shadows as he had done so many times before. He had no desire to be a hero in the eyes of the world. His work was done, and there were other places that needed him more. He left behind a world that was safer, but he knew that the universe was vast and full of unknown dangers. The legend of Kale, the man who defeated the most dangerous creature in the universe, grew with each telling. His story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, a single act of courage could change the fate of the galaxy. And somewhere, in the far reaches of space, Kale continued his journey, ever watchful, ever ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For he knew that as long as there was darkness, there would be a need for those who were willing to fight it.